first item on the list. We'll start with a news story that Larry cares deeply about, I'm sure.
All right.
Titanfall 2.
I
Some
do care
information.
deeply.
Here we go. I'm in control of the computer as well this week, which was different, and I'm at this odd angle, so it may take a minute. All right, this is from Nicole Carpenter over on IGN. It says Titanfall sequel will have a single-player campaign, though it won't release until late this year or early next, said lead writer Jesse Stern. Stern told Forbes, Titanfall 2 will take place in a world both scientific and magical, but is still grounded, dirty, human, and real. Respawn Entertainment's development team began working on the sequel in 2014 after finishing Titanfall's downloadable content. All right, there's more to this story. Actually, let me keep reading. Quote, one of the shortcomings of the first game was we just did not have the mechanism to tell everyone, here's who you are, here's where you are, and who's around you. We knew all the answers, we just could not deliver it, end quote. Back in October, Titanfall sales passed 10 million, giving the studio flexibility in exploring the story it originally wanted to tell. Stern said Respawn is looking to, quote, deliver a vision of grand global colonial warfare and retell the story of the American Revolution and the American Civil War in space, end quote. That's part of the story. We'll get to the second part of the story here in a minute, but I want to talk about the single-player campaign because I think we all agree that the game lacked in that regard. Like, I mean, obviously, it didn't have one, but it also lost quite a bit for not having one.
I don't think it's that they didn't. I don't think it would have been such a big deal if they hadn't tried to have that multiplayer story, because that was just done so poorly. You could not fight battles and focus on what guys were saying over the intercom and pick up what was happening with any kind of accuracy. I think if they just would have just not done a story at all, it would have been better. That being said, I'm interested in a single player campaign, but at the same time, I have no idea what that would look like for this game. I don't know how that would be done well or done in any kind of way that's fun to do.
I think about like some free-to-play shooters that come out, like PlanetSide 2 is an example I think of, where it's really just a multiplayer element to it, and there's a story behind it, but the story is kind of given to you as you're trying to do things that you're far more focused on accomplishing, and you lose that. And even just the ability to add cutscenes that matter, which is something that the first Titanfall lacked. Like, you had no attachment to players or no attachment to either side of the story, and like just from exposure of playing it, I'm sure you could have dug and found the side that you were rooting for or whatever, but it doesn't even need to be a long thing. Just give a 5-6 hour campaign that you could play through just to give us a backstory of what the world is going on. Like, how did the world get to this? Because that's something that it was more about, like, trying to gather resources and defend resources in the first game, but really no sense of why you were doing those things. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah. As far as attachment to characters goes, I always think back, like, one of the main characters sacrifices himself at the end of the game, and I didn't care. Nobody cared. We're like, who's that guy? He just blew up? Well, there you go.
And the thing is, how many people that played Titanfall even realize that happened?
Yeah.
Because most of the time, because with multiplayer, you're mostly just worried about jumping into the fight and thinking, and you're changing your loadouts and you're doing all that sort of stuff. You're not really focusing on the story, and a campaign gives players that dedicated time to be able to step back and just watch a cutscene without having to worry about weapons and strategy and all that sort of stuff. I mean, think about like Call of Duty, and we talked about with Black Ops 3 releasing on the last gen consoles without the campaign, that you lose a lot within that, because even though it's maybe not be the main thing for the game, it does provide context to these arenas that you're fighting in and these sides that you're fighting for when you do play the multiplayer. Did you play Titanfall, Diz? You're not a big multiplayer guy.
I didn't play it, but for me, if they're wanting this single-player mode to really portray the story, there's going to have to be, I feel like there's going to be a shift in focus, because very rarely will there be a game like Halo to where like the single-player and the matchmaking are equally engaging. Like you said with Black Ops, like there was a shift of when it went into being more of the zombie game than the campaign game. And since this is already starting out as this multiplayer, they're really going to have to do something big, do something really engaging to have people want to play it. Like, people really latched onto it because of the multiplayer aspect. And if they're wanting to show this story and have people be engaged in it and want to play it over the multiplayer, then there's going to have to be that shift in the focus. But I don't know if that's if that's something that they can tackle all at once with like a Halo format of being very successful on both sides, because I have yet to play it. But it's like I'm very intrigued with what they have to say, because how they described it, American Revolution in space. I'm totally into that. And as you already said, I'm very much a single-player oriented person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm already pretty excited about it. Like, that's something that I will play. I will buy. I'll try to tackle the multiplayer. I'm trying to make that a big focus this year, is to get more into the multiplayers and be more ingrained in that. But I'm hoping that they don't have to cut down on the impact of the single player. I hope that they can knock it out of the park and have both a very successful single player and another successful multiplayer. So I'm being very hopeful about it.
And the way you guys are talking right now is a testament to how terrible the storytelling was in the first game, because the American Revolution in space is the story of the first game, but nobody knows.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The American Civil War part is interesting too, because they mentioned both of those. There is another part to the story though that may help on this regard. So let me switch this over. It says Stern also told Forbes Respawn is working in partnership with Lionsgate TV to develop a Titanfall spinoff TV series. The problem, Stern said, is its cost. Quote, "It would be very expensive. We are trying to find a way to tell a story in the worlds we want to be in and produce in the TV model," end quote. So yet another story element that they're trying to add. I think they wouldn't be focusing this much on it if it's not something they didn't hear every time they turned around about the game.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very caught off guard by this, because did they not say earlier that the reason why they couldn't portray a good story in the first one was because of lack of
funds?
Yeah. So now they're saying that they need to throw another huge chunk of money at the TV show. Would that leave less for there to be a good single-player campaign?
Yeah, but what you got to remember is Titanfall was a new IP at the time, and with any new IP comes risk, even with as much hype as was behind it, because hype doesn't always lead to sell-through. And go ahead.
It was a new IP, and I would argue the first IP that mattered on the Xbox One.
Yeah.
I didn't I could have bought an Xbox earlier and didn't, because there was nothing to play.
And you could tell that there was you could tell that there was some financial struggle within it, or else they wouldn't have allowed Microsoft to back up a truck of money to their front doorstep and say, "Hey, release this only on our console." And so, selling 10 million units on a console that last week we already talked about has only sold 19 million units. I mean, that's over 50% attachment rate on this console. So money's not as much of an issue now, and I mean, this is just. Let's say those 10 million copies were all sold at $60. You're talking about $600 million, right? Is that the right math?
Let's see. If we divided the lottery money up among every American.
But that's right? 600 million?
They don't do
Math.
math at Bible college. Why are you asking us? We're just
Either
as
way.
ignorant as you are.
Either way, the money isn't as much of an issue now. And I imagine if this game is coming, that was the other interesting thing, that saying that it may be coming at the end of this year, beginning of next. It'll be beginning of next at earliest. They're not going to release this alongside, whatever Call of Duty is going to be coming out, and whatever other big shooters are coming around.
Especially with Call of Duty lifting so many elements from this game, they would be too similar.
Yeah, and because they released in March, the first Titanfall released in March, and it did fine.
Yeah.
So TV series, what would you guys want to see out of that?
I don't know what to expect.
I love mech stuff. Like Pacific Rim, I loved it. My favorite show growing up was Gundam Wing. Gosh, every Gundam show, I freaking love that stuff. So they wouldn't even have to do much to impress me. If they got giant robots, that's why I was excited about this game. Remember, it's like, this is the closest thing to a good Gundam game I've ever seen. But I don't think they're going to have the funds to do a good live action thing. I think it's going to have to be some kind of animated deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't know how excited I am for it.
I can't think of another, game similar to Titanfall that has successfully went into this realm of media. Like when I think of video games that have been a successful, TV show, it's like Sonic, or what if Mario did something back in the day. I can't think of another like action-based game like this being successful in this new media. I can't think of one.
How was the TV series that launched alongside Master Chief Collection?
It was just okay.
Yeah.
That being said, though, Halo has saturated all kinds of media with pretty good success. The books, the comics. I don't know how the sales have been on the movies and stuff they've released, but everyone that I've seen has been good. I enjoyed it. Like they did kind of an Animatrix deal, like 6 animated shorts. It was pretty good. Except for one. I really hated one of them.
Okay.
I don't think it would be animated because he talked about being able to film in the worlds they want to film in. So they're obviously thinking live action on this thing. And also with a game that at least is attempting graphically to create a real world style, would animation disconnect it too much from what it's trying to be?
Remember that Starship Troopers show?
Yes. Yeah, Roughnecks.
Yeah, basically all of the style stuff Halo has was stolen from that.
Like, would this Titanfall be kid friendly? Because, Starship Troopers, it's an adult movie. There's a lot of violence, a lot of language, a lot of nudity, and they made it a kid friendly show. Like, would Titanfall be a kid friendly show? Would it be on Cartoon Network? Would it be on Showtime? Where would it be?
Well, the game itself isn't too non-kid friendly, so
It's just teen, isn't it?
yeah, I think so.
All right, we've got some comments rolling in about all this. Zephyr Baby says, Power Rangers. I want the TV show to be like Power Rangers. I want the whole morphin' time too, but pilots getting into the mechs.
Beautiful.
That's cool. And then Empty Vial says, Defiance was a little more successful on the TV side than the game side, actually. And it was live action, not animated. So they might be looking at Defiance and trying to do something like that.
Okay.
Another debate kind of broke out. I mentioned, the campaign wouldn't need to be long, like 5 hours or so. And Milky says 5-hour campaigns should no longer be tolerated. I'm looking at you, the Order 1886 and Call of Duty. God of War was one of the best games ever and was at least 10 hours. And Zephyr says Shadow of the Colossus 16 boss fights, but like 8 hours long. To anyone who didn't know how to fight the Colossus, maybe a little longer.
But none of those had a multiplayer aspect,
Well, Call of Duty does. And
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
God of War, Colossus.
the Order. Like, the Order was egregious because it was a $60 game that took you 6 hours to complete. And you had nothing else. You could go back and play it on a harder difficulty. But to me, that's not replayability. For some, it is.
Yeah.
But you could get the platinum for that game on one playthrough. Essentially, I'm pretty sure you could.
You just have to complete the missions. That's it.
It would complete the missions, find collectibles, do it on a certain difficulty. That's what the trophies were locked to. So Call of Duty having a 5-hour campaign, 6-hour campaign isn't that big of a deal when you've got 40, 50, 60, 80 hours of multiplayer that you can dump into. So I'm all about, if you're going to ship a game that's single player only, you better have a 10, 12 hour campaign, but not for Titanfall.
I agree there. I'm pretty sure there's not been a Halo game that had a campaign longer than 6 hours. And we all love the story to that one, but it's got such a multiplayer component to it that we can look past that.
Mm-hmm.